like that makes the podcast. The next thing, all right, so I saw 3 things on Netflix. Well, 4 things with the Gaffigan special that I told you guys about earlier at the start of the show. Another stand-up special would be Colin Quinn, A New York Story, which was super cool. A really cool show. It's like kind of like, I wouldn't say stand-up, but I mean, it was funny as shit. Colin Quinn's funny, but it was more like a one-man show type of thing. Jerry Seinfeld directed it, and it was cool. He told like the history of New York, like through different immigrants. Like he speaks about like when the Irish came, and then the Italians, and then he does like their accents and like how they mix together, and like different stereotypes of each ethnicity, and then the Puerto Ricans, and how the Puerto Ricans were always like outside in the like on the stoop in the building that they lived in. You know, the old lady was on the second floor looking out the window, and the boombox was on the first floor, half in and half out. And there were chairs outside and people dancing, and little kids and grandmothers and stuff like that. And then the Jews coming, and like just like the whole history of New York from like fucking Pilgrim times to like now, basically. And he did a really cool job. I enjoyed it. It was fun. You get a little taste of like history through his lens of New York, and it was pretty cool. And I learned something new, which I looked up after, that the first settler in definitely New York, I don't know if it was the United States, but the first immigrant, the first person to settle in New York before it was even New York, was a Dominican. So my Dominicans stand up. And his name was Juan Rodriguez. And what else? Evolution of Hip Hop. That was really cool. I definitely recommend it. It's like a 4P. I guess it's gonna be like a part of a longer series, but the first season is 4 episodes, about an hour each episode, and it's of the evolution of hip hop. Now, if you are anything like me, or like around my generation, or maybe not even my generation, but just don't know about the history of hip hop, it was cool to I learned a lot watching it. Hip hop is definitely my preferred genre of music. It's what I grew up on. But my generation is like the, you know, like Eminem, Nas, Jay-Z, Mobb Deep, and then you always hear, Big Pun. You hear like I know who LL Cool J was, obviously LL Cool J, but you hear like around like the tail, LL Cool J was like the tail end of it, kind of, well, not even really, but beyond LL Cool J and like the NWA and the Dr. Dre's and Snoop, and or I've heard like Melly Mel and Grandmaster Flash and I know who Run DMC is, but didn't exactly know their story. And who else? Africa Bambaataa and just names that you hear, Rakim, that are like the pioneers that like Jay-Z and Nas like always reference. You know what I mean? Like they're the OGs to me, and then they're always referencing these other dudes. And it's like, I know they're paying homage to them for a reason, but I didn't really know their story. The evolution of hip hop gets into all that shit, and it was really dope. And it does everything from its inception, like it literally takes a step back behind, before hip hop, pre hip hop, like disco was the shit, and that's what people were into. And then it shows how through guys like Grandmaster Flash that were just like trying different things and DJing. Hip hop was like DJing primarily, and then like vocals got introduced to it, but it was like DJing. Cool Herc. along with Grandmaster Flash around the same time period were fucking around with beats and the breaks on beats, and like mixing them together to try to make it continuous, and devising, connecting two turntables together and trying to make it like loop and play back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like the same break on a beat, to make this cool new sound that they were fucking around with. And it just shows like that whole evolution, how everything came together, how Ice-T's 6 a.m., 6 in the morning song was influenced by some dude who made a very similar song with similar cadence in Pennsylvania. And then if it wasn't for that 6 a.m. song, NWA wouldn't have been the NWA that we know, etc., etc. So it makes all those connections for you. It's pretty dope. It's called The Evolution of Hip Hop, and I recommend it. I'm definitely looking forward for them to do like another season of that. It would be cool to see the evolution of other shit too, like other genres, like stuff that I'm not into, or stuff that I'm into but definitely don't know like any of its history. The last thing, this documentary called Rats on fucking Netflix, and if you want to like shit yourself but be intrigued at the same time, like you can't look away but you want to stop watching type of thing, check out this motherfucking documentary. First of all, I live in New York, right? I'm from Queens. I live in New York City, and New York City is thought to have more rats than humans. We have like 7 million people, I think, as a population. So supposedly we have more rats. I don't know who comes up with those numbers or what, but just like the thought of, let's say the person's off by like half, like 50% wrong. There's like 3 million rats just like running around. It's like 3 million? That's fucking a lot, man. Ugh. They're fucking scary. They're smart. They evolve. They for example, this exterminator that was like being interviewed throughout the whole thing explained how if you set a trap for a rat, let's say you have rats in your crib or your business or whatever, and you set a trap for a rat, or you put poison out for a rat, the like bigger rats will tell like the smaller rats, like they communicate through pheromones and shit. They like tell the other rat like, yo, like the little, like the weaker rats, like, yo, go taste the poison, and then they'll watch him and see what happens to him. If he dies, then they'll like piss on it or something, on the poison, to let all the other rats know like, yo, don't eat this is poison. They do gangster shit like that. They do the same thing like with traps. If a rat gets trapped in a trap or on a sticky thing or whatever, they let the others know like of it, like the same way, like pissing on shit, and through their pheromones they communicate, and they're fucking smart as fuck, and they know where like garbage is, and they make these like tunnels, and something that I didn't know, they always wondered like how it worked, is that like how they could like squeeze into like little places and shit. Their bodies like stretch out mad long if they needed to. All they have to do is like be able to pop their head through a hole, and even though their bodies are like fat and plump, like it just stretches out, and they could like squeeze through anything as long as their head fits. Like they fit, the rest of their body fits, which is freaky. Now, one of the most interesting things that this documentary depicted to me is that you see, it's kind of like, this probably might not make too much sense, but it's kind of like time travel when you look at how different places in the world deal with rat problems and like rodent infestation. So it shows like stuff here in the city or in New York or in the States or whatever, where there are like schools for learning rat behavior, and agencies, city agencies, where people have to go and get certified, and noticing, having to learn how to spot rats, and then they walk them through the city and like show, take them on like field runs and stuff like that, and how to put out poison and the proper dosage based on the whole size of the holes, and et cetera, like that type of stuff. Then you have like some next level scientific shit going on, where people have, picture like this like sterilized white room with like hundreds of drawers full of like a morgue for rats, where they freeze the rats and they have them there to like study their like genealogy and how they are, their bodies are becoming immune to certain poisons and how they're evolving over time. And they have rats from like the 1930s or something like that, and they have them all documented, and they know that these are like filthy, animals. So they study the tapeworms that they get and the viruses that they get, looking for diseases that could be transferred to humans. Because like, let's say if your dog has a stomach virus or something, you don't get that stomach virus, because like dogs' systems are different or whatever. There's certain things that rats could carry, like germs and viruses and stuff that humans could contract, and they study like that type of stuff. And like they open them up and they put them in vials and they pull out the tapeworms, and it shows like all this shit in the documentary. So it shows like that level of how we're dealing with that issue, right? Then you go to some place like, I think it was like in England or maybe Ireland or something like that, where they have like like half a dozen Boston Terriers, like these little dogs, and then they take them out to the field because they have like a rat problem there. And then they take these like smokers, I don't know how to explain them. They're like long sticks with, I don't know, like fire on them, and then they put the fire out and then smoke. It smokes. They poke the stick into the holes where the rats are, and then it like smokes them out basically. And then the terriers like go crazy chasing them and fucking bite them and kill them. And they kill like dozens and dozens and dozens of rats like by doing that practice. And it's like a little more barbaric kind of, because it's like fucking dogs like chasing and like fighting each other and like ripping the rat in half, and you hear the rat screaming, and it's kind of sick like that. And then like they deal with it that way. Then you go to a place like India, where their like rat squad, like their level of dealing with oh, by the way, like in the States or whatever, where they capture like a shitload of rats and stuff like that, they like put them in bags and they inject them. No, how do they kill them? I think they smoke them to like knock them out, and then they inject them they start the euthanizing process. They fucking give them the lethal injection basically and kill them humanely and like some weird shit like that. Then in India, their like rat squad is literally a group of like 4 or 5 guys that walk around with sticks and nets and like long wooden sticks, and if they see a rat, they fucking hit it and try to kill it and catch it in the net. They catch it in the net, and it shows them, if they can't hit it with the stick. Like there's one dude that like grabs it and like cracks its neck, like twists the rat's neck, like breaks its neck and kills it that way, just like with his bare hands type shit. And then they do this all night. That's their job. That's their 9 to 5 or whatever. But at night, obviously, so not 9 to 5. But you know what I mean. That's like their gig. That's how they get paid. Then they go back to their headquarters or whatever. They turn in the rats, and they get paid like per head. So 10 rupees per rat or like some shit like that, whatever it is. And that's their job. Like that's how they're dealing with their problem there. When you think about things like the disease, like I just mentioned, that rats like carried like all these viruses and diseases and stuff like that, and mix that with how humans could contract certain of the diseases that they carry, it's kind of like scary to think and see, or not scary, but I don't know, it's like weird to see how we're dealing with it here, and then in India they're like grabbing them like with their bare hands and cracking their necks, you know what I mean? And they could potentially contract like shit by doing stuff like that. And something that I thought of just from like being in India is like a culture that doesn't really use like forks and knives and stuff like that. Like it's part of their culture to like eat with their hands. And I don't know, it's just like a weird difference there. They showed in India some like temple where like rats would go, and people would go to like worship the rats, because they felt that they believed in reincarnation, and the rats were their old family members that reincarnated. And you see the guys like mad rats like all over him and drinking milk, and he drinks the milk out of the same bowl as the rats, and the rats are like crawling up his shoulder, and they're like his pets. And there's like mad people that they go in there and they believe the same thing, that these are their relatives that reincarnated. Imagine if that was true. How sick would that be? Like that's why there's so many fucking rats, because there's so many generations before us. Then go to a place like, I think it was like Cambodia or Vietnam or something, where I don't even know where Cambodia is. I don't know if Cambodia is in Vietnam or if it's its own country or what. But it was one of those places, and there it's like a delicacy. Like they eat the fucking rats. Like I was telling my wife, I was like, how like a Dominican would be like, yo, vamos a comer un puerco asado or fucking chivo or something like that. Like they're like, yo, let's go out and eat fucking rat. Like that was like a thing. Like this guy goes into the field and gets a fucking boatload of rats, and then they sells it to a restaurant, and then in the restaurant they have a sack full of rats which are alive, and they put them in a bucket of water and they drown them. They die like that. Then the lady pulls them out one by one from the bucket, chops off their feet, their heads, their tails, and then she skins them, and then she los sazona with fucking salt, pepper, their whatever spices that they use and shit, and then they cook them, and then they serve them, and people eat them. Rats. Fucking rats. It's an interesting documentary, guys. Check it out.